Hi there, this is Kevin Patton with a brief audio introduction to episode number 47 of the A&P Professor podcast, also known as TAPP Radio, an oral history and epic saga for teachers of human anatomy and physiology. In the upcoming full episode, that is episode number 47, I'm going to be talking about the fact that artificial intelligence is coming to teaching. Yes, even in higher ed. And I'll discuss tips on how to prevent robots from taking your teaching job. And I'm going to talk about the human microbial system, that is the human microbiome, and how we approach it in teaching A&P. And I'm also going to introduce a series of special episodes that I'll be releasing this summer. The free distribution of this podcast is sponsored by the Master of Science in Human Anatomy and Physiology Instruction, the Happy Degree. Looking to power up your game in teaching A&P? Or maybe you have colleagues that could benefit from more training. Or maybe you could benefit from more training. Can't we all? Check out this online graduate program at nycc.edu/happy. That's HAPI. Or click the link in the show notes or episode page. It's word dissection time, and the first term that I'm going to dissect is one that we've been hearing a lot about lately, but not necessarily related to the teaching of A&P, and that is artificial intelligence, or AI for short. So let's tackle the first part of the term, the word artificial. Now, this isn't a term that we normally break down the way we break down scientific terms, but we can. I mean, it's built that way, and even though it's an ordinary English word, that hasn't stopped us before, has it? We're going to dissect it anyway. So the first part of artificial is art, and you know what art is? And that's hard to define. I mean, that's like classically hard to define. What is art? I don't know what art is, but I know it when I see it, right? But we could define it, I guess, at least in a very simplistic way, as a craft or something you make. And then the FIC part of that, the fish part, or fic, would be to make or do. And then the AL ending we've seen a million times before, and that means relating to. It's an adjective ending. So if you put all those pieces together, you're talking about a word that describes something that's crafted or made. Presumably it's made by people. So that, relates to the actual dictionary definition, which is something along the lines of, a thing made by humans or something made by humans rather than just appearing in nature. So that's artificial. And now the intelligence part of that term, artificial intelligence, let's break that one down too. So, again, it's just an ordinary English word, but it can be broken down into word parts like our scientific terms. Intel, the first part, is actually derived from another word part that we see a lot, and that is inter. That means between or among, or something equivalent to that. So between or among is the intel part. And then the lig part means to pick up or choose. It comes from actually a word part, leg, and that means to pick up or choose. And then the ence ending is, again, a very common word part that we see even in our A&P terms, and that is a state or a condition or an ability. We put that all together, and what we get is, if we literally translate these word parts as sort of a phrase, it's the ability to pick up from among things or between different things. And that kind of fits with how we understand what intelligence is, right? I mean, again, a very simplified dictionary definition of intelligence would be something along the lines of a capacity for learning and understanding. That's what intelligence is. So, yeah, that makes sense. An ability to pick from among things or between different things. Sure, makes sense. Okay, let's move on to our next term, and that is microbe. MICROBE, microbe. That's a term that, of course, would come up ordinarily in A&P, right? But let's break it down because that's what we do. And so the first part, micro, very common word part, means very small or tiny. And the ob ending, actually, it's really just the B that we need there. That's the active part. That's the active word part there in this term. And B is actually a shortened form of bio, which you already know means life. I hope you know that because we're all teaching biology, so we ought to know at least that one. And so you put that together, microbe, and it refers to a very tiny organism. Another way of defining that would be to translate that as microorganism, but I don't want to do that because then you're taking micro and translating it as micro, and that doesn't make any sense. But the B or bio part refers to an organism here. So, we look in a medical dictionary or scientific dictionary, and we see that microbe is defined something along the lines of an organism that's too small to be viewed by the unaided eye. That is, you need a microscope, or at least some kind of a magnifier. And, the examples often given are things like bacteria and protozoa, and maybe even some of the smaller fungi and algae and things like that. And even though a lot of us don't really classify these technically as organisms, I would include viruses in there because the microbes we're going to be talking about in the full episode are part of the human microbiome. And that does include viruses. And so, at least in that sense, we're including them as organisms. That leads us to the last term that we're going to dissect in this preview episode, and that is microbiome. That's, very much related to microbe, right? So again, the word part micro means small or tiny. The bi part of biome is, once again, from bio, which means life or something living. And then we have the ome ending, and we see that a lot in A&P, especially these days, right? Like genome and proteome and all that stuff. And ome means an entire collection of something, usually a collection of similar things. So put that all together, micro, bi, and ome, and it translates as an entire collection of microorganisms. And that's what a microbiome is, right? It's an entire set of microorganisms that's living and interacting in a particular area. And of course, that's derived from an ecological term, biome, which talks about, a set of organisms, different communities that are living together in an interactive way in a particular kind of situation in nature. And we call that the biome. This podcast is sponsored by HAPS, the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, promoting excellence in the teaching of human anatomy and physiology for over 30 years. Go visit HAPS at theapprofessor.org/HAPS. That's HAPS. It's time once again for a recommendation from the A&P Professor Book Club. And this time we have longtime listener Mindi Fried, whose voice you've heard before in this podcast. And she's the first to call in with not one, but 2 book club recommendations. You'll hear her other recommendation, which is actually for a series of books, in a future preview episode. The one I'm giving you now, though, is one that I'd never have looked at if not for Mindy's recommendation. Here she is.
Hey, Kevin, it's Mindi again. My other book recommendation is the book Do Zombies Dream of Undead Sheep? It is by Timothy Verstanen and Bradley Wojtek, and I probably massacred both of their names, and I deeply apologize if that was the case. The subtitle to this is A Neuroscientific View of the Zombie Brain. I love this book. It is written in a very engaging way, and this book was what sparked the idea for my zombie project, which if you were at HAPS and went to my workshop this year, you learned a little bit more about. Basically trying to use the idea of zombies and what's working in zombies and what's not working in zombies to teach A&P. And this book really goes into different parts of the brain and why they are working or not working in a zombie. It is a fantastic book. It's a really good read. I recommend it highly.
Well, thanks, Mindi. This book is definitely on my reading list now. And I'm going to admit, it's the only zombie book on my list at the moment. Or ever. Now, Mindi is going to get a $25 Amazon gift certificate for each book recommendation that gets into the A&P Professor Book Club. So there's her first certificate right there. And because she's among the first 5 contributors of a book club recommendation, her name is in the hat to receive a free Kindle Fire HD 10 tablet. Yes, free. A tablet. And you can join in on this too by calling in with your book recommendation at 1-833-LION-DEN or sending an audio recording to podcast@theapprofessor.org. Now, there's still room in the first 5 drawing, so it's not too late. But it might be too late soon, so why not do it now while you're thinking about it? For more details on this or any other recommendation in the A&P Professor Book Club, just go to the approfessor.org/book club. If you click on the link there, or in the show notes or episode page, you'll go to even more details at Amazon.com, where any purchase you make through the link will add a few cents to keeping this podcast freely available. A searchable transcript and a captioned audiogram of this preview episode are funded by AAA, the American Association of Anatomists, at anatomy.org. Well, this is Kevin Patton signing off for now and reminding you to keep your questions and comments coming, and those book club recommendations, don't forget about those. Why not call the podcast hotline right now at 1-833-LION-DEN. That's 1-833-546-6336. Or visit us at theapprofessor.org. I'll see you down the road.